Welcome back to another Murderous Minds Monday, where we cover the most notorious serial and mass murderers, and we talk about why they committed the murders and give some opinions. Today we are talking about the notorious serial killer or spree killer, Joanna Dennehy. She is just the third woman in the UK to be given a full life sentence. So we're going to talk about the murders that she committed, her early life, and why we think she committed these murders. So if you want to hear more and want to hear the story of Joanna Dennehy, then let's get into this. Joanna Dennehy was born in St Albans in August 1982. An exact date of birth is not known and I couldn't find it online. She grew up in a nearby town called Harpenden. She had a father called Kevin and a mother called Kathleen. Kevin was a security guard and Kathleen worked as a retail shop manager, like a grocery store manager. She also had a younger sister called Maria, who would actually be really successful in life. She went into the army and then later on ran her own IT company. So Maureen would say that their childhood was very normal and they actually had quite a spoilt childhood. However, Joanne has later claimed that she was actually abused as a child by her parents, but there is no evidence of this ever happening. Maria has said that her parents were never abusive. And also friends and family have also said that the children were treated very, very well. So when they were younger, Maria and Joanne would actually share bunk beds and share a room, and they were so close that they even invented their own language to communicate with each other. Joanne as a young child was very into dolls and all things sort of the classic like girly things, so like dolls, makeup, things like that, her hair. She attended Roundwood Park School in Harpenden, and it said that she actually did very well at school and there weren't many issues to be reported. She was a very capable and bright child, and her parents actually hoped that she would go to university and become a lawyer because she had the capability of doing that later on in life. Her parents even paid for her to have extra tuition so that she could excel at school, and she was also part of the school's hockey and netball team. So she had a very normal, I'd say privileged childhood, with having parents that could pay for that extra tuition and being involved in all those clubs at school. So from what I read, she had a very normal childhood. However, later on in life, Joanne started to actually skip school and go and hang out with her older friends. So she wasn't really attending school as she should be. And when she was just 13 years old, she actually ran away from home for the first time. She had met a young man, I say young man, he was an 18-year-old footballer called John Trenner, and her parents found this very inappropriate, as all parents would. A 13-year-old or an 18-year-old going out with a 13-year-old is just strange. Like, what interest does he have in a 13-year-old? So her parents actually tried to put a stop to this. However, Joanne and John decided to just run away together. They decided to run away together to a hostel in Milton Keynes. So her parents did find them and took Joanne back to Harpenden, so their home in Harpenden. However, she just ran away from home again and again. And at this point, she actually began to steal from her parents. So she would steal like money to be able to pay for the hotels that her and John were staying in. She also used the money that she stole from her parents to pay for drugs and alcohol, since she had begun to become addicted to drugs and alcohol at the age of just 13. It's also said that she would actually turn up to school drunk and high a lot of the time. And at the age of 16, she would leave home for good, only to return home again when she needed money from her parents to pay for her addictions. So she actually moved out with John at the age of 16, and they settled in a home for the first time a few miles away up the road in Luton, and then they moved to Milton Keynes, where they ran away to originally. So while Joanne was actually still a teenager, she had 2 children with John. It's said that during her pregnancy with both children, she actually gave up drugs and alcohol to have a very healthy pregnancy. However, after the birth of her children, she would get straight back onto the bandwagon and begin to abuse drugs and alcohol again. And after the birth of her first child, she became estranged from her parents, told them that if they wanted to see her child or their grandchild, they would have to pay to have visitation. Disgusting. Also, Joanne and John's relationship was very, very turbulent. She would cheat on John quite regularly with men and women, and she would also tell her friends that she actually never wanted children. She would then just leave home for days or weeks on end, and when she finally did return, she would just beg John for forgiveness. The couple decided to try and restart, and they moved to East Anglia. However, Joanne's drinking got so much worse after the move, and Joanne, she did work as a labourer on farms, and she would sometimes be paid in alcohol for doing these jobs, so she wasn't bringing home money at this time as well. And her mental health was also really suffering. Trigger warning, we're going to be talking about self-harm and just bad mental health at this point. She started to cut her arms, her body and her neck with razor blades, and she actually etched a star tattoo under her right eye on her face, which that's crazy to do that. So at this time, Maria, so Joanne's younger sister, was serving in the army, and she was in Afghanistan at this time, and they had really drifted apart. So after she returned from her tour, she tracked down her sister, tried to contact her, but Joanne made it clear that she wanted nothing to do with her sister or her family. So the relationship between John and Joanne got worse. She started to physically abuse him. She would punch and kick him. So when Joanne was drunk, she actually started to carry a dagger around with her in one of her boots. And she would openly say to friends that she often felt like she just wanted to kill someone, which is a very concerning thing to say, especially when there are 2 kids in the property at this point as well. John was so scared that Joanne would use the dagger on him that he left Joanne in 2009 and took the kids with him. However, when John left with the children, Joanne's behaviour just got worse. This didn't help her at all. She just drifted from address to address. She didn't have a permanent residence in East Anglia, and she would steal from people and houses, and she would sometimes turn to prostitution to fund her drug and alcohol addiction. Also around this time, obviously because she is stealing and robbing houses, she did serve some time in prison and was treated for her mental health problems. And just a year before she began to commit the murders that we're going to talk about, February of 2012, she spent a few days in a psychiatric hospital in Peterborough City, and she was diagnosed with an antisocial personality disorder and OCD. When she was arrested, she was looked into by a psychiatrist, and he said that she had paraphilia sadomasochism, and he stated that people that suffer with this condition experience sexual excitement from acts involving inflicting pain, humiliation or bondage. And it turned out that during sex, Joanne liked to give or receive pain. So when Joanne was released, she met a Polish national called, I'm going to slaughter this name, I'm not very good at names, as you can tell, but she met a man called Slabosveski through a shared interest that they had in drugs and alcohol. So they had an exchange of messages, and these messages promised more than just a quick fix and a boozing session. So it was a dull Tuesday in March 2013 when he received a text from Joanne asking him to come to her address, implying that there was something else going on and that he would be receiving something other than just alcohol and drugs. So he went to the address provided, expecting to have sex with Joanne, but he would actually not live to tell the tale of what happened. He actually believed that Joanne was his girlfriend. He sent a message to his friend saying life is beautiful when they first met. So obviously he'd really fallen for Joanne, was infatuated by her. However, just inside the front door of Joanne's property in Peterborough, detectives are not sure if he was entering the property or trying to leave the property, but in the entrance of the property, Joanne launched a savage attack and stabbed him through the heart with a pocket knife. So yeah, instantly killed him. With the help of her friend Gary Stretch, he was a very, very tall man. He was 7'3", which is insanely tall. She and Gary put Slabovsky's body into a wheelie bin. Because Gary would just follow Joanne around like a little lost puppy, he would do anything for Joanne. So this was not a big ask for him to do this. While the body was in a wheelie bin, Joanne was so excited that she actually showed it to a 14-year-old teenage girl as some kind of like bragging, but obviously this just scared the 14-year-old. A couple of days later, another friend called Kevin Lee helped Joanne and Gary buy a Vauxhall Astra, which was dubbed the hearse, and they used the vehicle to dump Slabovsky's body in a ditch on the outskirts of Peterborough. If Joanne had just stopped there, she would have been found for the murder of Slabovsky, she would have been thrown in jail, and this would have all been over. However, the murder of Slabovsky was just the beginning of an extraordinary killing spree, and this is the spree that would give Joanne the title of one of the UK's most notorious murderers. Within 10 days of Slabovsky's death, Joanne launched another attack, and she used the same pocket knife to kill her housemate, 56-year-old John Chapman. Before this attack, John and Joanne had been taking drugs and alcohol, so John was in a very vulnerable state and could not fight back. Joanne said that the reason for this attack was because John had actually stared at her while she was washing in the shared bathroom. However, another possible motive that a friend of Joanne said is that she just wanted him out of the property by any means necessary. She didn't want him to be living there anymore. She stabbed John once in the neck, twice in the heart, and 3 times in the back. She then sent Gary a text with the Britney quote of, "Oops, I did it again," which is, I don't know, she's so detached from all of this. She's just killed someone that she actually knows quite well, like her roommate. And she's just like, "Oops, I did it again." So, of course, Gary turned up and helped her to clear up. And this was together with another housemate called Leslie Layton. They dumped John Chapman's body in the same ditch as they dumped Slabovsky's body. So they're together in one ditch. So then Joanne moved on to her third victim, who was 48-year-old Kevin Lee. He was her landlord and her boss. She moved into a scruffy bedsit that Kevin was the landlord for, and she would help Kevin with some odd jobs. Though she was only small, she wasn't a big person. She was known to have a fierce temper and won a reputation as someone not to cross. So the relationship with Kevin Lee, he was a husband and father of 2, but the relationship developed and it was more than a landlord and tenant relationship. They started an affair with one another. Kevin had actually said to his friends that he had a very troubling relationship with Joanne, stating that she said she wanted to dress him up and rape him. However, she managed to lure him to her house, again the same as Slabovsky, with the promise of sexual favours. The motivation again as to why Joanne attacked Kevin is very hazy. Gary said that Joanne attacked Kevin Lee because he hadn't paid her for some odd jobs that she had done for him, and that she was owed quite a bit of money, and that apparently he was harassing her, so she just wanted to kill him. So Gary and Layton were aware that this attack was going to happen, and they were on standby to help clean up. After the attack happened, they torched Lee's car and his body was dumped in another ditch. Not the same ditch, a different ditch. They actually put Kevin's body in a sequin dress. So you know how Joanne had said that she wanted to dress him up and rape him? Well, they put him in a black sequin dress and he was found with his bottom exposed. So he left behind his wife Christina and his 2 children, Chiara, who was 26, and Dino, who was just 15. When they heard that the bodies had actually been discovered, Joanne and Gary fled to a friend's house. They visited a previous cellmate of Joanne, Gillian Page, in North Norfolk. And Gillian said that Joanne was excited when she saw that the police were putting out an appeal on the television to find her. Obviously, they didn't know it was her, but you know what I mean. And she was apparently jumping around, like giddy with excitement. And apparently she was just ecstatic that she had got on the news. Like her murders had got on the news. Joanne told Gillian that she knew that she would be going to jail for a very long time due to these murders. And she compared herself and Stretch to the American outlaws Bonnie and Clyde. So after this brief drop-off at Gillian Page's house, Gary and Joanne carried on travelling with another friend called Mark Lloyd. They travelled 140 miles across the country to Hereford, where she would attempt to murder 2 more random men. The first man that she tried to attack was a man called Robin Bereza, who Joanne tried to attack from behind. The attack was luckily stopped, so she'd used the same knife that she'd used on her previous killings to try and stab him in the back. It actually took him a while to realise that he'd actually been stabbed, because it just felt like he'd been punched in the back. And the attack was only stopped when a passerby intervened, which was very brave. And Joanne just ran back to the car that had Gary and Lloyd, and she kissed Gary on the cheek like she was saying thank you to him, which is strange. Just 9 minutes later, she spotted her next victim, who was John Rogers, and she would stab him and leave him for dead and stole his dog. Don't know what happened with the dog, but I'm hoping, since we don't know what happened, that the dog was taken away and that nothing else happened to that dog. By the time that Joanne was arrested in Hereford after a nationwide manhunt had been underway to find her, the blade of her pocket knife had started to turn black from the dried blood of her 4 victims. And one of Joanne's friends said that she'd actually started to smell like blood. So later on the same day as these 2 random attacks, the police arrested Joanne and Gary after they had found the bodies of Slabovsky and Chapman in the ditch that they had been disposed in. So police have still not identified any clear or lucid motive as to why Joanne did these attacks, and also why she did the random attacks in Hereford. It just doesn't make sense. Obviously, she knew Chapman, Lee and Slabovsky, so she may have had some more like personal motive, but for the other 2 men that she attacked in Hereford, there is no official or there's no valid reason for attacking anyone, but there's no rhyme or reason as to why she did those attacks. The only thing they could kind of put it down to is that she was a long-term drug user and drinker, and she had been in trouble with the law previously for burglary, theft and drug-related things, but that's the only... She'd never been for any major violent attacks or anything like that. Also, the diagnosis of sadomasochism a year earlier does not justify why she did these murders. During Gary Stretch's trial, he compared the story of Joanne to a 17th century tragedy in which one crime would lead on to others and other atrocities. In this case, the murder of Slabovsky led on to the deaths of Chapman and Lee. However, Joanne herself has actually put it a bit more bluntly. She's told one friend that she committed these 3 murders because they shouldn't have just pissed her off. They'd done something to piss her off, and so they had to die. There's no logic for any of the crimes that she committed. It's also clear that she obviously revelled in the joy of people searching for her. As we said, she was jumping for joy when she was at her friend Gillian's house when they were doing the search to find the person who committed these murders. She actually boasted that she had killed 8 men in total, including her father, 2 people in a house fire and 2 in a hit and run. And her father's alive and well. He's not dead. And there has been no evidence produced to support that she had done any other murders like she had said. So I don't know why you would brag about that sort of thing. I don't get that. And when Dennehy received her conviction of a full life sentence, she is only the 3rd woman in English history to be assessed by a court that she is too dangerous and she can never be released. The other 2 people, or the other 2 women that have received this conviction, the first was the Moors murderer Myra Hindley, who is now deceased, and the second was Rosemary West for the 10 murders with her husband Fred that they committed. So the judge who convicted Joanne said that a whole life sentence was very much needed, since the murders that she committed were premeditated and planned. So Joanne's accomplice Gary Stretch was jailed for life with a minimum sentence of 19 years for helping Joanne dump all 3 bodies and for his role in the attempted murders of the other 2 men. He was the one that drove Joanne around Hereford looking for her next 2 victims. So he was very compliant with this. Leslie Layton was sentenced to 14 years, and a 3rd accomplice, Robert Moore, who was 55, was admitted for assisting an offender and received a 3-year sentence. Kevin Lee's wife, Christina, actually said that she thinks Joanna manipulated and brainwashed her husband, and this caused him to make all the bad decisions that he did. Obviously, we can't put all the blame on her because obviously he did have an affair with Joanne, but she thinks that he paid for this mistake with his life. Also, the other 2 men, one of them is a retired firefighter, and he said he's not able to go about his life as he used to because he is so changed by this attack and is so fearful going out in public. So yeah, but now Joanna is behind bars. She is serving her full life sentence. Like, she will never be released. There is no chance that she will be released. And that is the story of Joanna Dennehy. I hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, this is a bit of a different one. I haven't done a female serial killer before. So yeah, but we're still not too sure if she is referred to as a serial killer, because obviously there has to be a cool down period, or just a spree killer. But there is a 9 to 10 day cooling off period. So she's kind of in the middle of both. She could be classed as a serial killer or a spree killer. So she's in her own category, like Joanne would like to be, I guess. So if you enjoyed today's video, give it a big thumbs up. Let me know what you want to know down below. Let me know your thoughts on why you think she committed these murders. Do you think it was just because of drugs? Do you think there was some other motive there? Do you think she was abused as a child and that's possibly the reason why she did it? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I will link the products that I've used on my face today also in the description down below. But I hope you're all safe and well. I will see you next Monday for the next Murderous Minds Monday. Stay safe out there, guys. Bye.